Wake up, wake up. This is Wake Up Israel News with Chris Judah. Story about the giants, man, of the Bible, and it's still here. And my experience with something strange. Not only my experience, but the people that I know that experience things. These are all black people now. It's not just white that I know. These are Hebrews that experience things. And people would rather listen to a damn dumbass rap song, stupid television shows, and then say you're crazy when you talk about giants and they still exist. Story. Let me talk about some of your story. Now I'm gonna tell you about a story about my experience, and somebody jumped in the conversation with a friend of mine named Bo, and there's another young guy that we was hanging out with this evening, taking him home from the gym. He worked at Planet Fitness in Georgia, in Jonesboro, Georgia. And we started talking about giants in the Bible, and giants still exist. So I'm telling, we talk about the experience that we had, me and Bo. So the young fella who Bo was taking home, he said, "Well, let me tell y'all this before I, forget, man." He said, "Look," he said, one of my friend's brother, it's like a street guy. They say this. He said this brother don't talk much. He's a street guy. He smoke weed. He drink. He just quiet." So he was telling me about it. Him and his friend brother was all talking one night, and they was talking about giants. And his friend brother cut them off and said, "Wait." He said, I got something to tell y'all what I seen one night." He said, on the way home in Georgia now, someone down 75 South, he was coming home. And as he's going down the highway in Georgia, I think it was 75 South somewhere, maybe it was a back street somewhere in Georgia, 2 o'clock in the morning. He said he saw something walk across the street. And as they was driving, it was late. I think it might have been a full moon, whatever. He said as something crossed the road, it had a deer cuffed up on his arms, like like you hold a book bag, or you hold books up on your arm. He said this thing had a deer walking with it up under its arm. And he said his friend brother told them that this thing was about 11 foot tall. No lie. I said, how did he look? He said he explained like he looked like more like a Neanderthal looking type creature. Now this is in Georgia, so you can imagine what's in Texas and California, Michigan, the Carolinas, and northern Georgia, Tennessee. I have heard things that I cannot explain. Me and my cousin and my mother. And I tell you what I heard. I heard a sound that wasn't a wolf, because I heard a wolf a month prior. And it was a wolf dog in Georgia. Georgia, if you don't know, you from Georgia. The state of Georgia let out wolves to keep down their population, right? Well, I seen a wolf. It was no coyote, it was a wolf. It was thicker, he had a thick neck, it was no straggler coyote. And it was a wolf den by my house in South Fulton, around the corner. So I seen and heard a wolf in August. But in September, I heard a strange sound, and it sounded like Tarzan. That thing did not come up for air, and I'm gonna let you hear what I heard. Now, my friend Tamika saw a Neanderthal type Bigfoot giant in Jersey. My friend Keisha, when she grew up in Michigan, she saw, when she was a kid, used to play in the woods. She used to see this little tall thing with hairy legs just running around the woods. And it wasn't no hobo, it wasn't no hillbilly. She said she just couldn't explain. It was so tall, all she seen was his legs and up. And she was just a child. My friend Tamika also talked about seeing a thunderbird. My friend Lisa also talked about she seen a wolf dog man creature on two legs, and it never came down on all fours, which they call that the dog man. That's the werewolf. It's the such thing as werewolf. These creatures is Hollywood don't put out shit for no reason. They know what's out there. So all this stuff, I'm gonna show you David Pilates. I have did stuff on David Pilates. This white detective guy. He always have interviews of his investigation called Missing 411, where all these people, mainly white people, get missing. Black too though, but mainly white people of German descent, which is crazy. White people of German descent, right? Get missing in these woods, hiking, going out, getting mauled, getting missing, never ever seen again ever. But I'm gonna let you hear what I heard. Hold on. Now wait, I'm gonna let you hear this first. This is not what I heard, but listen to this sound that these people recorded before. And you probably heard it before, but these things are real, they're not fake. People, these are the true entities, the giant underground giants that live in these caves underground, and just right beneath our noses. We already know they're there. This is not what I heard, but I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna show you what other people recorded. It's like years of footage. I mean, a sound a prop. These are two guys talking back to these things. They out in the woods at night like a crazy ass, but they are talking back to these, and these things are responding. This is what they call a Tasmanian devil call. Come on. You're not very sociable tonight. Now, come on down. Okay, I'll go back here.
So, do these sounds prove that Sasquatches mimic human communication? Though some have suggested that the sound is nothing more than a siren. Researchers have asked why a siren would be in the middle of a forest anyway.
Now, and pause it. I heard this sound twice by my house. 2014 in September and November. While I heard the sound the first time in September, they knocked down those trees like they was clearing the area down for something. Like they was trying to run something out of there. I've been living in this area all my life for 42 years. I have lived in New York, I lived in Florida before. But mostly my life, I have lived on this street, in this town. They have never touched those trees where they started moving trees where I heard that sound at. like they tried to like they wanted to run something away from there. And that same year, my uncle told me that I heard the sound. He said this truck driver that was driving down Dead Man Curve in Georgia. Dead Man Curve in Georgia, right? He told me, my uncle told me that a truck driver pulled over on the side of the road, called the sheriff, the Coweta County Sheriff, and told them that he saw a big brown bear across the street. They gave that man a breathalyzer test because they thought he was on drugs. He was drunk. It was the same year I heard that sound. There's no brown bears. We only have black bears in Georgia, and that's North Georgia. And we damn sure ain't got no brown bears walking around here. So what that man saw was something else. All he can do was rationalize it as a bear, but it wasn't no fucking bear. I'm telling you for a fact. Not too far from where he saw that years ago, a husband and a wife saw two giant Bigfoot creatures, two different separate incidents. The husband saw it first, and the wife saw it second with their daughter. Down in Master, Georgia. Not too far from what a truck driver seen that, right? Now, I'm gonna let you hear what I heard. Go. Keep in mind, when I heard that, I have heard a Bigfoot. I'm sorry. Let me stop. I have heard a wolf before that. So the sounds were totally different from a wolf I heard from that sound. Let me see if I can find it on this one. It was this video too, but this the main one with this right here. So this is about the closest one on this video.
Hey, Jason here with my friend Ben behind me, and we have a
man. I'm back. I hope you guys can hear me, man. Good God, this damn TV ain't hitting no jack shit. All right. I'm back. Dark Waters, man. Listen to it. 40 minutes.
And devour him, as foretold by the book of Giants. My name is Roger, and I've been called many things. To some, I'm a crazy man. To others, a hero. But in reality, what I am and what we do is hunt monsters. Our objective is to hunt and kill the clan north of Ruby, Alaska, and cleanse the earth of these vile creatures. This story is the tale of our expedition. The events detailed here are all true. Many of you think you know what Bigfoot is, but you don't. You are ignorant to the reality of what it is that you face, and you assume that you're safe. I can assure you that the world is full of dangerous monsters. And if you actually knew the truth, you would realize that our world holds many terrifying creatures. Just the sight of these creatures causes the hearts of the best men to falter. On a plane, the 5,000-mile flight to Alaska was just as I expected it to be, full of jokes and laughter. After all, the crew we had was a mixed bag of sociopaths, psychopaths, and one techie. I'm not sure about the company you keep in your life, but these guys, they're a handful. Now for the crew. Steve and I go back, way back to the 5th grade. I'll never forget the day I first met him. It was cold as shit. And in the infinite wisdom of St. Rita's private school, they decided to let the kids out on the yard for recess. Now don't let the name fool you. St. Rita's was a private school, but it was kind of rough. To this day, I don't understand why Steve's father insisted he attended the school anyway. I guess you can say his father believed in tough love. As for Steve's family, now they're rich. And I'm not talking about bullshit.com stock market rich. I'm talking about oil money rich. The type of rich no one in his family really had to work for the next 7 generations. But his dad was old school. He drove a beat-up pickup truck and made sure he counted every penny. Steve's older brother worked at McDonald's his entire senior year at high school. Anyway, back to the story. That day, Steve was on the yard, surrounded by some of the less desirable kids in the 6th and 7th grade. And true to his MO, he didn't know when to back down, and he damn sure didn't know when to shut up. I couldn't stand by and watch them just beat him up. So I interceded, trying to help out, only to take that ass whooping with him. Ever since that day, Steve and I have been best friends. And man, what friends have we been? Our friendship has taken us all around the world. We got to some crazy shit. I'm talking about drunken fistfights on the beach in Ibiza, chased by tigers in India, arrested in Moroccan whorehouses. The list goes on and on and on. The sheer and utter delight and danger that we have experienced as friends is just incomprehensible. It was all fun and games until one evening in the jungles of Venezuela, we ran into something that should not have existed. This creature had the body and the face of a woman with wings like a bat. It ruined our expedition and killed 50% of our crew. From that day on, we decided to hunt and kill these abominations wherever we may find them. Which brings me to the next member of our crew. It was on an expedition to Africa in search of the lion of Judah that we found him clinging to his last breath. Batal was 18 years old when we discovered him, hidden inside of a hollowed out tree stump, clutching his empty AK-47. He was a fierce child soldier. Batal's parents were killed when he was 10 years old. His mother brutally raped and his father killed before his eyes. So for the next 8 years, he was forced to fight and kill indiscriminately. During that time frame, he became one of the most feared soldiers on the battlefield. So feared that the other generals decided that it was better to take his life than let him take over their army. So one night, the general sent 30 soldiers to kill him. By morning, 30 men lay there dead, and Batal was gravely injured. When Steve and I stumbled upon him in the jungles, he was barely clinging to life. And from that day on, Batal has been with us. I witnessed him kill a full-grown lion with nothing but a 45 and a machete. He's a 6'8" African badass with a serious attitude problem, but we love him to death. Also with us is Charlie. He's pretty new to the team. Graduated from MIT with a degree in information technology, then went on to work for Microsoft. He was there for 2 years before he got caught hacking. You know, Charlie really gives me the creeps. You know, he reminds me of one of those guys on To Catch a Predator, except for Charlie's the kind of guy that'll hack your baby monitor and watch your wife breastfeed. He's sick. I repeatedly told Steve that I don't care for him and I don't even want him around. And truthfully, I hope on this trip, Bigfoot shoves a keyboard right up his ass. That way I don't have to be bothered with him anymore. He served as our tech guy, setting up cameras and stuff like that, the geeky stuff that allows us to see what's coming to get us before it gets us. As for the rest of the crew, they're all ex-military contractors. Karate Kid, who's my boy, I love him to death. He's our point man. He looks just like Ralph Macchio. Chef, who's our cook and deadly with anything with a sharp point on it. Scissors, who got his name tortured jihadis in the Middle East. And last but not least, Gentle Ben. I think this son of a bitch is Paul Sasquatch himself. 6'11", 275 pounds of lean muscle. Ben. Now, Ben is extremely fast and agile for his size. And the worst thing about Ben is he's unstable. And he's triggered by the least of things. Just last year, we're in Saudi Arabia at one of the markets. And this street vendor decides to start laying into his wife. I mean, beating her up. Foot to mouth type ass whooping. It looked like some WWE shit going on in the middle of the street. Steve and I just kept walking. It wasn't any of our business. But no, not Ben. Ben had to get involved. For some reason, this stranger beating his wife triggered him. And I don't know what it was. Maybe his father used to beat his mother's ass when he was a kid and he would witness it. But oh my God, he walks up to this man and with one hammer fist, bam, smashes him on the top of the head. He falls to the ground and he proceeds to start kicking him over and over and over again. In about 20 seconds, it's all over. But there's a crowd surrounding us all at this point in time. Ben looks into the crowd with this look on his face, like I dare any one of you to do something. And not one person moved. Yeah, Ben is our boy, but Ben is unstable, and he's got problems. It was this crew of men that landed in the Beechcraft 450 at a tiny airport in Ruby, Alaska. And after a long process of unloading our gear, we all headed up the Mezzanine River in a few small motorized boats. Now you need to understand something. On the Mezzanine River, they don't really like you using motorized boats. It's more of a recreational type river. You find people kayaking and things of that nature. But we didn't have time for kayaks. The area we were headed to was 15 miles upriver, and we had to travel 3 to 5 miles north into the wood lines to reach the area we knew the creatures lived in. The ride upriver was slow and rather uneventful. You know, we saw a few grizzly bears, a moose here and there, some oversized beavers, but nothing really exciting. One thing that did kind of pique my interest was for a while a grizzly bear decided to run along the banks following us upriver. After a few hundred yards, he decided we would not worth his effort, so he ran back off into the woods. When we reached the area marked on the GPS, stopped, pulled up the side of the water, and headed into the woods. Now, this terrain was like nothing I'd ever really seen before. The Sika spruce trees went on for miles. The only good news was that the woods in this area wasn't really dense, so you had a good line of sight and good vision all around you. With our equipment gathered, we embarked on a hike towards the base of the mountain range. Now, I've been all over the world and been in some creepy places, but there was really nothing quite like this. The feeling that this place gave you was just being so isolated. It was different. And from the minute we headed into the woods, I had the feeling that something was watching me. Even Ben commented that something had eyes on us. He could feel it. The spot we had picked to camp for the night was about 1.5 miles away from where we suspected that Bigfoot's territory was. So we got to work, cutting down trees and making a sufficient base camp. Charlie and Kid ventured out to set up night vision cameras and perimeter sensors, while the rest of us set up tents and solar power supplies and the rest of the equipment. By nightfall, we had finished our prep and were set up. Roger rested in his tent, while the rest of us were just sitting around telling stories. Somehow, during the time we were setting up, Chef had ventured out and killed one of those oversized beavers. And by the time he finished with it and added some rice, you'd have thought we were eating at Applebee's. So around 10 o'clock, just when we were all about to settle down and rest, one of the perimeter alarms on the north side was triggered. Of course, everyone huddled around a little table that Charlie had set up as a monitoring station, and we discovered 2 grizzly bears moving silently through the woods. Now that is weird. Grizzlies are normally a solitary animal. You rarely see two of them together, ever. Just then, the two animals stopped and began to sniff the air with the nose pointing upwards and to the north. Then a larger one stood up on his hind legs and began to growl and roar. This sound echoed through the night air. And then the second one did the same thing. For a moment, they just stood there, staring into the darkness. Then came this vocalization like nothing I'd ever heard. One of the bears took off running full speed out of the view of the camera. And the other one again stood up on his hind legs and growled. Next, we heard what sounded like a tornado coming down the mountainside, breaking trees, rocks falling, and this yelling that was almost deafening. This grizzly bear took off south, heading straight for our camp. And within 45 seconds, a 400-pound grizzly bear was bolting through our campsite and headed southward towards the river. Ben, Ken, and Chef grabbed their weapons, preparing for whatever it was that was chasing it. But the sound stopped. Looking back on it, I believe that this is how they first came to know exactly where our campsite was. Later, this would be a major problem and one that will almost cost me my life. The following morning, at dawn, we all ventured northwards towards the area where we had heard the sounds coming from. Now, the terrain in this area was quite different and sloped steeply uphill to the point that each step was difficult. Kid who was on point radioed back to us that he had found some large broken trees up ahead. Then a few minutes later, he said something that let us all know we had reached these creatures' territory. What in the name of Jesus? He sounded frantic when he told us about the huge trees driven into the ground upside down with their roots exposed. Some were older, but others were fresh and had just been placed. By the time we reached Kid, I died with his finger on the trigger. This might not be such a good look for us. Whatever did this had to be huge, Kid said. Steve looked unfazed as he inspected the tree, and he signaled for us to venture further beyond what clearly was some type of boundary line. As we moved deeper into the wood lines, it became evident and clear that we had reached some type of plateau. And I couldn't help but feeling like I was invading some type of foreign soil. The wood seemed completely still. Not just silent, but still. Almost as if the trees themselves was anticipating something happening. We didn't have to wait for long to discover what it was. Ben, who was covering our six, shouted, "Contact!" Then let loose from his weapon. Then it went silent, and he shouted, "Target hit!" Rushing towards the direction in which he fired, we discovered blood-splattered hair. This thing had to be fast. It took us less than a minute to get to the very spot he was shooting at. From there, Kid fanned out looking for a blood trail and any signs where it went. Only to return 5 minutes later and said he had lost the trail. It was like the creature had just disappeared. For the next 2 hours, we explored every square inch of that plateau and found all kinds of signs that this was indeed their area. Broken tree limbs that they used as markers, huge structures made of broken trees. This was a jackpot. Everything was here except for the climb. Now the climb to move further north was way too steep. So we decided to head back down towards our campsite. After what happened today, everyone knew there would no longer be a need for us to go out looking for these things. They were going to come to us. And when we arrived back at the campsite, Charlie was already working to move his motion sensors out 200 yards away from the camp. He said after hearing all the gunfire in the distance, he knew tonight we were in for some shit. And boy, was he right. No sooner than the sunset, we began to hear them from every direction. There was this whooping and then the screaming, almost as if they were calling out to each other over a long distance of miles. Around 10 p.m. that night, everything went silent. Steve looked at Ben and Chef and said, "Hey, get ready. I think they're coming in for us." Charlie had this small drone that he flew up into the air just to inspect the area to see what was surrounding the perimeter. And from this bird's eye view, we saw 15 heat signatures all around us. We were surrounded on all angles. But for some reason, they were staying beyond our perimeter. We didn't know what they were going to do next. But I knew one thing, we weren't going out to them. They were going to have to come to us. 10 minutes later, the northern perimeter alarm went off. Then seconds after that, the southern perimeter alarm went off. Then the east and the west perimeter alarms went off. They were moving in. You could feel the ground rumbling as these things ran in at us. They would run just beyond the area of the lights, almost as if they were running zigzag patterns crossing around us. This full speed running back and forth, left and right, north, south, east, and west went on for the next 15 minutes. I think they were checking our defenses for some type of weakness. Then it started. A full-size tree came flying in over our heads, hitting one of our lights and knocking it down. Chef and Kid, who were covering the south, began to fire their weapons. Steve and I began to fire. Then covered the east while sisters covered the west, back to back with our backs turned to each other. We fired round after round and clip after clip. Charlie huddled in the middle of us with his computer trying to find out what was going on. And he kept calling, incoming from the north, incoming from the south, incoming from the east. After what felt like an hour of pure madness, Ben got completely and totally enraged. And I saw him out of the corner of my eye going to his case and grabbing his AA-12 shotgun. Once he began shooting that shotgun, all activity ceased. And high above us, in the area of that same plateau, we heard a scream so loud and so powerful that I knew that this was just a test. The real danger was whatever that thing was at the top of the plateau, screaming and giving orders to these creatures. That we would discover the very next night. The following morning, camp was a mess. 3 out of our 4 lights were destroyed, and they had thrown full-grown trees at us. Charlie started just bitching and moaning about not being safe. He wanted to leave. The little wussy acted like he had a choice in the matter. Steve was clearly perturbed as he walked around the perimeter.
Introducing Pulse. Broken phone? We fixed that. It couldn't be easier. We'll be
Hold on, buddy.
in a heartbeat 7 days a week.
I hit 3 of them in the chest multiple times, he said. So did I, said Ben. I hit 2 of them with the AA-12. What was most confusing was that there was no bodies. Vital, who I only saw one time during a firefight, was not in the campsite. When Steve and I realized this, instant panic set in, and we began to look around for any signs of where he might have gone to. Fanning out in all directions, we moved around searching for him. And just as Steve and I began to assume the worst, he signaled us from high in a tree. Now, somehow, during a firefight, he managed to flank these creatures and get well behind them. Vital went on to tell us that he observed them during the fight, that these animals carried their wounded and dead off when they left. He also told us that when they left, they scattered in all directions. Vital believed that this was not just one clan, but it was 4 clans that we were up against. I have to admit, I was impressed. How the hell did he pull this off? And for the first time, I began to think that we had bit off way more than we could chew. A huge part of me wanted to leave. And Vital even said it. This is a fight we cannot win. But I knew Steve, and we weren't going anywhere. When we returned to camp with Vital, there was this synchronized exhale and a brief moment of relief. But as soon as Charlie started yapping about wanting to leave, the shit hit the fan. Steve grabbed him by the back of the neck, pulling him close and whispered, I didn't hire you for your fucking opinion or cowardice. Now get your ass moving.